Imagine you're riding a bike and you fall sideways. Which surface would you rather land on? Hard concrete or a thick, soft lawn? Most people would pick the grass. The reason is that the grass spreads out the impact. Even though the force of the fall is the same, the lawn slows you down over a longer period of time and across more material, so you feel less pain. This idea of spreading out force over distance, time, or material is called force dispersal. Instead of one sudden sharp force, the impact gets shared or slowed down. And to really understand what's going on, we need to look back at Newton's third law of motion. Newton's third law says that for every action force, there is an equal and opposite reaction force, equal in magnitude and opposite in direction. Every time one object pushes or pulls on another, the second object pushes or pulls back with the same amount of force. Let's look at this using a spring scale. When I pull on the scale, the numbers tell me how much force I'm using. If I pull harder, the spring stretches and shows that I'm using more force. Now, let's connect two spring scales. When I pull, notice that both scales show the same number. If I pull one side to 4 newtons, the other side also shows a force of 4 newtons. That's Newton's third law in action. The force from scale A on scale B is equal in magnitude and opposite in direction to the force from scale B on scale A. They always match. But what happens if I attach two spring scales to one side? Watch what happens when I pull on a single scale connected to two others. The force gets divided. When I pull the side with one scale to 8 newtons, each of the other scales only goes to 4 newtons, but they add together to make 8. Each of the two scales only shows part of the total force. When we add those two forces together, they equal the force on the single side. This is force dispersal again. The force isn't gone, it's just shared between the two scales. Now, let's look at one more real life example. Imagine a football player running down the field with no pads on. Another player tackles them. If the player is tackled with 1,000 newtons of force, he's going to feel that entire 1,000 newtons of force. The collision is fast, the impact is sharp, and all of the force hits the player's body in one small area at one moment. That's going to hurt. Now picture the same tackle, but this time the player is wearing full padding, shoulder pads, chest pads, and even padding inside the helmet. The tackle still happens, and the force between the two players are still equal and opposite, just like Newton's third law says. But the padded player doesn't feel the same sharp impact. The force is divided or dispersed. The padding gets 700 newtons of the hit, so how much will the person actually feel? Since forces are equal and opposite, we still have to have 1,000 newtons. So that means 1,000 minus 700 is 300, and the person will feel 300 newtons of force. Pads don't make the force disappear. Both players still push on each other with equal and opposite forces during the tackle. That part is guaranteed by Newton's third law. What the pads do is disperse the force. Instead of all that impact hitting one tiny spot on the player's body, the padding spreads the force out over a larger area. It also slows the collision down by increasing the time it takes for the player to come to a stop. When the same force is spread out over more area and more time, the player feels less pain and is less likely to get hurt. So, whether it's landing on grass instead of concrete, wearing protective padding, or splitting the force between multiple spring scales, the physics is the same. Newton's third law guarantees equal and opposite forces, but how those forces are distributed makes all the difference in what we feel.